I know it's an inconvenience, but I'm sorry. Please bear with me for a bit. My sister-in-law returned to her parents' house after getting a divorce. According to her, the main issues were a clash in values and her husband's severe emotional abuse. My husband and I were already living at the in-laws' house, so sister-in-law seemed guilty and apologized to us. She mentioned she'd be moving out as soon as she found a new job and place, so I reassured her, "This is your family home, don't worry and take the time you need to heal." Little did I know, this would soon become a source of stress for me. My name is Anna. I'm 21 years old, housewife, working part-time. My husband is on an extended business trip in another state due to his demanding job. Originally, we lived in our own apartment, but my mother-in-law strongly suggested we moved into the family home. She's alone a lot since my son travels for work, and I worry about Anna. If you guys live with us, you'll save on rent and can save up. As we're getting older, it would give us peace of mind having you here. I was a bit surprised when my husband shared this with me, but I agreed. At the time, our relationship with the in-laws was good, and I was pretty laid back. After living with them for 2 years, I honestly regret the decision. Everything was fine until last year, when sister-in-law, Rachel, returned after her divorce. That's when things took a turn. "Anna, I'm craving roast beef for dinner tonight." Coming home from my part-time job, I set down my grocery bags and quickly replied to sister-in-law's request. "Sorry, I can't just whip up roast beef on short notice. I plan to cook salmon tonight." From the background, my mother-in-law chimed in. "You know roast beef is Rachel's favorite, right? As a daughter-in-law, you should consider everyone's preferences." "I'll keep that in mind next time," I replied casually, choosing to ignore her snide remark, and headed to the kitchen. The humble sister-in-law who returned post-divorce is nowhere to be found now. Looking back, I think her apology to my husband and me was just a show. I believe she intended to stay at the family home all along. And my mother-in-law, who was initially so kind, now seems completely under sister-in-law's influence. Every day feels like I'm being treated as a housekeeper, constantly harassed by my sister-in-law. I'm in charge of all the household chores, and with a part-time job on the side, I'm always worn out. Sister-in-law doesn't contribute to the household tasks or finances. She and my mother-in-law either lounge around all day or get dressed up to go out. I think we should stop living together, but my husband travels a lot, so we never have the time to discuss it. There is another reason I hesitate. "Anna, welcome home. I know it's a Sunday, but thanks for working today. I've put away the groceries for you. Why don't you take a break? I'll help with dinner. It's tough doing it all by yourself." "Thank you, father-in-law. You're always so kind." My concern is with my father-in-law. In my husband's frequent absence, the only reason I can bear living here is because of the kind-hearted father-in-law. He may have spoiled sister-in-law, just like mother-in-law did, but he always stepped in and scolded her when she was rude to me, saying something like, "She might be our darling daughter, but wrong is wrong." However, this often got him into trouble with mother-in-law. "Why do you always take her side over our daughter? Aren't you her father? You're such a lousy husband." I worry that if my husband and I were to leave, father-in-law would be the one treated as the housekeeper and mocked. I entered the room we use as our bedroom and sighed deeply. I took out my wallet from my bag, counting the bills inside and noting the amount in a notebook. The reason? About a year after sister-in-law's divorce, I started noticing money missing from my wallet. My money is decreasing again. It began with A mere discrepancy of a few cents, and the amount steadily increased over time. Being meticulous about my finances, I started keeping track, and was shocked when thousands went missing. Clearly, someone was stealing from my wallet. Given the amounts and frequency, it was obvious how lightly they thought of me. I tried carrying my wallet all the time, but sister-in-law scolded me, saying, "It's in the way while you're doing chores." I didn't want to suspect family, but sister-in-law was the main suspect. Even though she hasn't worked since her divorce, she's always out and about. And I wonder where she's getting the money. I once talked to my husband about it, but without proof, there wasn't much he could say. Next time, I'll catch the thief red-handed. The thief seemed to know my every move, never slipping up. I closed the notebook, put on my apron, and headed out. Then, one day while I was doing my usual chores handed down by mother-in-law, I thought of taking a short break. As I was heading to my room, I saw sister-in-law sneak into our bedroom. Suddenly, I think of the money in my wallet. This is my chance to catch the culprit in the act. As I walk in with determination, I find sister-in-law frozen in the dim room, clutching my wallet. What's more, her fingers are digging into it. This is conclusive. "What are you doing?" In my calm voice, sister-in-law quickly shut my wallet. "What do you mean, what? I just saw your wallet lying in the hallway and thought I'd put it back in your bag for you." "Why would you put your fingers inside my wallet then? If what you said is true, you wouldn't need to do that, right?" Sensing my suspicion, sister-in-law forced a smile, her face tightening. "You think I'm stealing? I didn't take any money. Why are you so paranoid when you only ever keep about 500 in there?" Sister-in-law, raising her voice, threw my wallet back into my bag. "I've noticed money missing from my wallet before. Tell me the truth, did you or mother-in-law ever take it?" I was now convinced it was sister-in-law and questioned her directly. "I always keep about $500 in my wallet just in case of emergencies." But I was the only one who knew about this habit. "What's going on?" Hearing sister-in-law's loud voice, mother-in-law peeked in. Seeing her chance, sister-in-law clung to mother-in-law. "Mom, Anna is accusing me of stealing from her wallet. She thinks I've done it multiple times." Upon hearing sister-in-law's words, mother-in-law glared at me sharply. "Why would you accuse Rachel of such a thing, Anna?" "Ever since Rachel came back, money has been missing from my wallet multiple times. Just now, I saw her going through my wallet without my permission." Mother-in-law, who immediately sided with sister-in-law, didn't seem to care about my earnest plea. I briefly regretted not recording the situation on my phone. I had been too focused on catching her red-handed. "How can you treat Rachel like a thief? I can't believe it. After all, you're still an outsider. Besides, Anna tends to overreact. Maybe she just wanted some attention." Mother-in-law's words, calling me an outsider, hit me hard. I tried so hardly as my husband's wife and as a family member, even though we had only lived together for 2 years. I couldn't take it anymore. I silently left the room, went outside without taking my bag. "Where do you think you're going without even making dinner?" I heard sister-in-law shout, but I didn't care. My quick steps gradually slowed down. It was getting dark and the wind felt cold. Where was I going like this? Dressed in my home clothes, a worn-out apron and sandals? I had neither my phone nor my wallet. Lost in thought, I sat down on a park bench when I heard, "Anna, what are you doing here?" Father-in-law, dressed in a suit, looked down at me curiously. I recognized that apron from afar. His words made me feel a bit embarrassed. Mother-in-law had given me that apron as a token of appreciation when I agreed to move in. I accepted the canned coffee father-in-law handed me, expressing my gratitude. The next moment, emotions I had suppressed welled up and I started crying. Ever since sister-in-law got divorced and came back to the in-laws' house, I noticed money missing from my purse occasionally. Today, I finally caught her in the act, but mother-in-law didn't believe me. I received a tongue lashing from both sister-in-law and mother-in-law. Father-in-law, who had been silently listening to my story, apologized. "I am truly sorry. I've noticed how my wife and Rachel have been acting lately, and I feel responsible for not stopping their rude behaviors." Prefacing that he had thought about it for a while, father-in-law continued. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider our living situation. You shouldn't have to go through this. Neither I nor our son would want that." His suggestion left me taken aback. It was a generous offer, but thinking of father-in-law without me made me feel guilty. "Let's head home," he said. "If we bring back some fancy sandwiches, those two will forget their complaints in no time." As I searched for words, father-in-law gave a knowing smile. When father-in-law and I returned to the in-laws' house, mother-in-law and sister-in-law approached us, grumbling as expected. The moment they received the sandwiches we brought for dinner, their moods brightened and they ignored me. I retreated to my room, appreciative of father-in-law's understanding, and called my husband to discuss moving out and tell him about the day's events. One evening, a week later, as mother-in-law, father-in-law, and I were having dinner, the sound of the entrance door caught our attention. Sister-in-law, who went out earlier that day, had returned, but the noise was alarming. With loud footsteps echoing in the hallway, an infuriated sister-in-law appeared. "Rachel, come in quietly," father-in-law chided. Ignoring him, sister-in-law glared at me, furiously pulling out several bills from her wallet and slamming them on the table. Instead of the familiar $100 bills, they were toy bills, with a mysterious character in place of Benjamin Franklin. "I was on a date today and got utterly embarrassed." "You were on a date, Rachel?" I pretended to be overly surprised, making sister-in-law blush. "That's not the point. What were you thinking?" Her loud voice close by made me cringe. "You'd still hear me without yelling. You say you didn't steal from my purse, and mother-in-law doesn't believe me, so I thought I'd place toy bills in a test. It seems Rachel was indeed the culprit. It's amusing that you tried using them without even noticing they were fake. She must have been stealing so frequently that she didn't bother checking the bills. Perhaps the dim light in my room, due to the closed curtains, was a factor. I don't know who she was on a date with, but I bet the most surprised was her date." Sister-in-law realized she'd unintentionally confessed due to my remark and froze on the spot. Mother-in-law, following sister-in-law's gaze, was in disbelief. "I can't believe this." "Rachel, wasn't the allowance I gave you enough? I even took out $300 every month from the savings I secretly built up. I can't believe what Anna said was actually true." Father-in-law, having believed my story from the beginning, was giving sister-in-law a look of utter disbelief. "You were giving that much money to Rachel without telling me?" It was revealed that mother-in-law had been giving a significant allowance to sister-in-law every month. Father-in-law was even more shocked, letting out a heavy sigh. Sister-in-law tried to justify her actions. "I mean, if I remarry, I can't just be a housewife again and live an easy life. Living alone and finding a job, that's way too much of a hassle." Is that any sort of excuse? There's so much I want to comment on, but the fact that she was using my money for her dating expenses makes me want to laugh more than getting angry. Sister-in-law looked to my mother-in-law for support, but mother-in-law avoided her gaze. Realizing she was on her own, sister-in-law exclaimed, "It's just a few $100. You've embarrassed me twice. I can't forgive that." She raised her hand. I instinctively closed my eyes, expecting a hit, but felt nothing. Opening them, I saw my husband had grabbed sister-in-law's arm, stopping her. Both the in-laws and I were surprised by my husband's sudden appearance. "Why are you here? You weren't supposed to be back yet." "I finished work earlier than expected," my husband replied gently. He then turned to mother-in-law and sister-in-law. "I've heard the whole story from Anna and Dad. The day I stormed out of the in-laws' house, I had a phone call with my husband. I told him all about mother-in-law and sister-in-law's harassment and that I'd reached my limit. My husband deeply apologized to me. Eventually, father-in-law joined the call and using speakerphone, we discussed future plans. The idea of swapping the money with toy bills to make sister-in-law confess in front of the in-laws was my husband's idea. It was a plan to vindicate me and hold sister-in-law accountable in front of mother-in-law and father-in-law. Now that it's clear Anna was right, shouldn't you both apologize? Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were clearly taken aback by father-in-law's statement and my husband's stern expression. After all, Rachel, didn't you promise to move out as soon as you found a job and a new place to live? Mother-in-law retorted, "This house is Rachel's childhood home. She can stay as long as she wants." Of course, that would have been fine if Anna wasn't being hurt by it. My husband then comfortingly placed his hand on my shoulder, which instantly gave me courage. After discussing it with father-in-law and my husband, I can't forgive Rachel or mother-in-law, so we've decided to end our living arrangements together. Mother-in-law looked shocked, but I added, "Remember, mother-in-law, you were the one who treated me like a stranger." She looked deeply hurt by my words. "By the way," my husband continued, "I spoke to Rachel's ex-husband recently. Turns out, Rachel's excessive spending and emotional abuse were the real reasons for their divorce. He was so angry, saying he was kind enough not to claim compensation during their divorce proceedings." Both my in-laws and I had never heard this before, so we all exclaimed, "What? Wait a minute! Why did you contact him without telling me?" "It's you who lied to us, that's the problem, right? Your ex-husband said he's definitely going to make you pay compensation for the divorce." Sister-in-law's face, which had been red with anger, was now pale with fear and trembling. Apparently, my husband had been suspicious of sister-in-law's reason for her divorce for a while. After hearing from me and father-in-law, he decided to give her ex-husband a call. Sister-in-law looked like she was on the verge of tears. "Just so you know, I've been keeping track of the money you took from my wallet, so make sure you pay it back." My words were the final blow, and sister-in-law sat down right there, defeated. Half a year passed. After my husband and I left the in-laws' house, they kicked out sister-in-law. According to father-in-law, mother-in-law has finally come to her senses. Now, she's like a different person, even doing household chores. They haven't cut ties with her, but they've decided to keep their distance from sister-in-law unless it's necessary. The money sister-in-law took from my wallet, although paid back in installments, was returned using the money she earned from work. However, she faced a lawsuit from her ex-husband for emotional abuse during their marriage and had to pay compensation. She went around saying she divorced because of her ex-husband, so it's a result of her own actions. The other day, I received an apology letter from mother-in-law addressed to me. For a moment, I remembered the kind mother-in-law from when we first started living together. However, the past can't be undone. Now, with my husband's work easing up, we are living a happy life together. I'm determined to never take someone's love for granted or hurt someone dear to me by my own actions.